My parents officially declared my death to empty my bank account and appropriate all my money. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on notifications. I'm 48, my father is 80 and my mother is 78. They made a polite attempt at reconciliation after a series of events, including declaring me dead. I'm not used to them accepting my choices or showing respect, and I'm torn about how to deal with them or whether I should even talk to them. This story began more than 30 years ago in Germany, when I had just turned 16. I was accused of stealing a neighbor's car and damaging another neighbor's fence while fleeing from the police, intoxicated at the time of arrest. Although I proclaimed my innocence, I was not believed and was sentenced to 500 hours of community service. My parents used this as a tool to keep me away from my friends, convincing a judge to make me work Friday and Saturday nights at THW, a humanitarian aid organization. Furthermore, I lost my moped driving license and was only able to obtain it at the age of 20, after passing a psychological test. The money I saved to buy a car, about 10,000 marks, was used to cover damages. Unfortunately, this alienated my friends, who lost interest in me because I couldn't party on the weekends. I was forced to be a pedestrian for 4 years as my uncle headed the local THW and I conveniently lost my work timesheets, resulting in 14 months of forced service. Although I learned a lot during this period, the work would have been interesting if not for the coercion. My parents claimed they were doing this for my own good, to keep me away from bad influences, and asked my uncle to extend my stay there. In the end, I left remorseless and enraged that they had essentially doubled my sentence. Still, I managed to do well in school, focusing on academics after losing my fickle friends. I tried to reveal the truth about the car accident, but I failed the retrial process as my sentence had already been served. The truly guilty person received a sentence of just 100 hours of community service at his trial. I discovered that my parents, who knew the innocence of whoever committed the crime, had put the money resulting from the damage into a bank account. They said I would receive this money upon completing my studies, whether at school, university, or an apprenticeship. Additionally, they added 15,000 marks to the savings, considering the hours I spent at THW, a generous salary for a teenager. I still felt great indignation towards them, as I would have to wait until I was 20 to get my driver's license. If they had informed me sooner, I could have sought to have the sentence overturned, and in about 5 years, I would have received the 25,000 that they basically took from my savings. However, they were unwilling to reciprocate, claiming that I was too immature to make my own choices. After an intense discussion, I decided to take my tent and camp in the forest. He continued to attend school, but did not return home. After a week, they called the police, forcing me to return. I was only 17 at the time. As soon as the police left, I returned to class, sleeping wherever I could, often in barns and in the woods, weather permitting. The police eventually found me, as my parents requested help daily. If I were caught, I would be forced to go home. They locked me in a room, but I waited patiently until school ended and disappeared as soon as classes ended. Finally, I turned 18, and the police could no longer force me to return home. I had half a year of school left, and so I continued. He had no friends due to the strange odor he carried and his lack of interest in making new friends, as he was injured and would not allow anyone to get close to him again. Despite this, I managed to finish school with good grades. After the end, I used mandatory military service as a means of disappearing. I volunteered for overseas service in Eastern Europe at the time. After 2 years, I ended my military service and had accumulated a considerable amount during my time in the army. Although he had no close friends, at least he was no longer an outcast. I enrolled at university and studied chemistry, where I discovered 3 good friends and met my first girlfriend, who I am currently married to. At 29 years old, I was studying for my doctorate when my parents occasionally managed to catch up with me. They convinced the police to look for me missing, resulting in fines when they found me. However, I refused any contact with my parents. The situation worsened when my parents filed documents declaring that I had died in an accident in Italy. As next of kin, the police provided my address while my bank account was frozen. The university informed me that I was no longer allowed to continue my PhD while I was dead, and many other things stopped working for me. 2 days after this disaster, my parents showed up in front of my apartment, demanding to speak to me. They said I forced them to take that step. They invaded my apartment and stated that they would stay until I was willing to talk and reconcile. I told them that if they insisted, they could keep the apartment, took my laptop as a souvenir and threw documents and a bag full of clothes. I left the keys and left. It took me a few months to convince the bureaucracy that the stories about my death were exaggerated. My landlord was understanding and returned everything that had left my apartment. After realizing that I wasn't coming back, my parents finally understood the gravity of the situation. They mainly removed the photographs that adorned my apartment, leaving only a letter that I decided to burn. Frustration took over me, as being dead caused countless inconveniences. The fear that they might find me again haunted me, so as soon as I completed my doctorate 15 years ago, I sought employment in another city to escape their influence. However, fate played another trick, and they located me again. This time, they sent a relative to say that they were deeply sorry and that they had no intention of causing a disturbance when they found me. They claimed that their emotions got the best of them at that moment and expressed respect if I still wanted to keep my distance, but they also suggested a reconciliation dinner. I confess that I am lost in this situation. I'm not sure what to do. Should I accept the invitation or stay away? One additional piece of information I never mentioned is that I never got my driver's license. I failed the psychological evaluation because I didn't want to face an alleged drinking problem and show remorse for a driving incident I didn't commit. I gave up on the idea, although now, without the test, maybe I could get it. However, I've gotten used to living without a driver's license and I don't see the need to have one. I did not receive the money that my parents supposedly saved with interest. I don't actually need it, and I'm sure they still have it in the account. They are hypocrites and idiots, but I believe they acted with the intention of guiding me to the right path. If I had kept in touch with them at the time and asked for the money to be transferred to my account, perhaps they would have done so. However, at that time, avoiding any contact was more important to me. So, the question that arises is, what if I do this now? The money was supposed to be in the bank account, as originally planned, to be received as soon as I finished school, university, or apprenticeship, in addition to the 15,000 marks for the hours dedicated to THW. There is also mention that they could have added another 25,000 in about 5 years. However, in practice, they basically stole my savings before they even declared me legally dead. If I make this decision, I will probably create more complications than I will solve. Some suggest suing them over this whole being legally killed issue, but that seems like a silly idea. They tried to find me for 10 years at that time, and despite making poor decisions, no lasting damage was done. Today, it's a joke I share with my wife and friends, and we laugh together. Heals many wounds, including this one. So at age 40, I'm stuck with what I originally planned to do, to the point where I lost all that money in my bank account. It seems that staying in contactless was more important than the financial value. Given this, if you were to advise me, what would you say? Would I recommend contacting my parents after all these years, or would I suggest keeping things as they are? Let me know below if you'd like to share your own stories for possible featured here on the channel. Go to the YouTube description, click on the social media link and share your best personal experiences. I recently made a mistake by kicking my sister-in-law and niece out of my house after they destroyed my precious plants years ago. I had a real appreciation for houseplants, and over the years I built a collection of up to 70 of them. However, I've narrowed down my collection to about 35, keeping only the ones I really love. My 14-year-old niece Jenny has also developed an interest in plants. She used to come and talk about them and even help with propagation and replanting. I recently had to travel for work for 2 weeks and asked my sister-in-law and Jenny to take care of the plants while I was away. I offered Jenny some seedlings as thanks. When I returned, I was shocked to discover that even though they had watered and provided the right amount of light, they had decided to drastically prune my plants. My precious Cebu blue pothos mother plant was destroyed, as was the Julia pothos vine. The same fate befell my gold, which I had trained up the stairs, in addition to my pearl heart necklace and ruby necklace. The silver philodendron didn't escape either, and, to my sadness, Princess Philorosa was reduced to just 2 leaves, while my elbow monstera was left with just 3. The situation got out of hand when I confronted my sister-in-law and Jenny, expressing my disappointment. Jenny began to cry, stating that she thought it was okay because I had given her permission. Furious, I shouted at her to immediately return what she had taken. The situation escalated, and despite her mother's pleas, I insisted that they were no longer welcome in my home. Later, my brother, my sister-in-law's husband, brought back what had not been sold and apologized. However, my anger persists, and now I'm wondering if I'm overreacting by no longer wanting to see them in my house or even in the same room as me. I need guidance to understand if my reaction is justified or if I am going too far. This sounds more like a robbery. I mean, somehow the Facebook market is connected to this whole situation that doesn't even make sense. So, she cut down all the plants and tried to sell them for profit. You can't turn this into something like, "Oh, I thought you wanted me to cut the hair on your plants by mistake." I didn't know if that was it, so the cuts would be set aside or thrown away because there probably wouldn't be that many. It appears that she destroyed these plants to profit from it. This is exactly what happened when it comes to the question of how the brother could not have known about the operation. He later said he noticed they were carrying a lot of things back home after coming here. But my niece said her aunts said it was okay repeatedly. I know some people who have extremely strong emotional attachments to their plants, the same way someone might have to their pets, like dogs or cats. However, I have never witnessed someone simply destroying these plants while they were away. Generally, when this happens, it is some kind of exaggeration, and the plant is not as healthy as it was before because it was not watered enough. But this is totally different. So if it was your beloved plants and this happened, what would you do? Idiot or not? And why am I an idiot? I removed the bedroom lock after my husband ignored a family emergency. Here's some information about my husband. He stays up late at night and has to get up early for work, arriving home at 5. He takes a 2-hour nap to make up for the lack of sleep and is ready to stay up late to play games on his console. He values his sleep and strictly follows the rule at home of not being interrupted while sleeping. He even put a sign on the bedroom door that says, "Do not wake me under any circumstances except if someone is injured or dead," although he mentioned that even in that case, it wouldn't help much. In the past, the kids and I would wake him up for serious reasons, and he would get angry and start locking the door. Last Tuesday, my 3-year-old son had hot oil spilled on his hand while his 14-year-old sister was cooking. I heard him scream and saw that the oil covered his hand up to the middle of his arm. I brought the first aid kit, but he was in a lot of pain, and his skin looked really bad. I ran to wake my husband, but he didn't respond. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I spent some time knocking on the door while he had his phone off and was getting dressed. After my daughter asked the neighbor to take us to the hospital, I couldn't waste any more time because my son was crying. The neighbor took us to the hospital, and I was furious the whole time. When we got home, my husband was asking where we were, and I didn't answer his messages. I exploded at him after I showed him our son's injury and said I knocked on that door to wake him up, but he claimed he had headphones on and didn't hear anything. I called him reckless and negligent for ignoring a family emergency. He countered, saying I could say the same about myself for leaving our son unsupervised and allowing him to get burned. I stopped arguing and, as I removed the lock from the bedroom door, he started shouting at me, stating that I had no right. I refused to answer and simply walked away to calm down. Dejected, he continued to complain, calling me bossy and claiming that by removing the lock, I destroyed his peace and quiet, causing him sleep deprivation. He insisted that I replace the lock, but I refused. I may be wrong for what I did, but I was frustrated and angry. So am I the idiot? My husband's normal routine every day is to come home and take a nap after work because he wants to stay up late to play video games. Everyone has their agenda, but it seems like it makes it difficult for the kids. I saw this daily. I knew a guy who would come home from school and sleep for 8 hours as soon as he got home. Then he would stay awake from that point until the next day. He seemed to really enjoy it and it worked well for him, but he never met anyone, went out with anyone, or saw anyone because all the hours he was awake when he wasn't at school, everyone was asleep. The difference is that this guy didn't have children. In this situation where they had to ask the neighbor to take them to the hospital, and if the neighbor wasn't available, I assume they did it because the wife couldn't drive or didn't have access to the car. But what if the situation was really serious, something where they couldn't wait for 911? They would have to leave immediately. What would you do if you were in this situation as a wife? Idiot or not, and why? Don't forget to subscribe to I'm the Idiot on YouTube, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories. If you want to listen to the next story in the background while you do something, there's a great playlist in the YouTube description that has you covered. Note that many of you like to listen to things in the background, and this is the perfect playlist. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you next time. Hello HistoReddit folks. Today we discussed a complicated situation involving a family emergency, neglect, and difficult decisions. If you think the person is right or wrong, share your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you like the content, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next fascinating stories. You guys are amazing, and see you in the next video.